Welcome back to the second half of iNN's Headlines and Beyond for March 27th, 2012. We were just finishing up talking about domestic affairs, particularly surrounding Obamacare, and really the failures of the social left to really demonstrate their humanity and say, this is not about control, this is about really bringing healthcare to everyone. Bring up, as I said, deeds really speak. It's one thing to get up there and give great speeches, but if you don't follow through on it and you have the resources, then people are going to view your work as bullshit. They say politically that the political term is rhetoric, but let's get real here. Obama is right now known globally. The view of him globally is he's a great bullshit artist. He'll come out there, he'll smile, he'll shake your hand, he'll, give a great speech, but that's all he's going to do. When it comes to actually getting something done, and the results that wind up following him on the ground is not what he's talking about. It's the furthest thing he's talked about. Right? He said he was going to bring in Obamacare. He has a room filled with billionaires. Right? Even has this great fancy executive council. He's got all his friends from the Ivy League schools with him, who have millions of dollars in their bank accounts. He's got a lot of the medical charities who have billions in their accounts with him, and he can't find the money to fund Obamacare. Obamacare is now such a mess that nobody knows what's inside of it. This Obamacare law is so big that nobody, they've passed a law that nobody knows what's inside of it. It's so big. This is a monumental failure. As I said, with the people that he's got, with the financial resources that he has, it didn't matter if he had the Congress or not, because in America, in the United States, if you believe in the American individual freedom, if you believe in what the flag stands for, if you believe in the American Constitution, you can stand up and create the healthcare system on your own. You do not need government approval. And he had this in his hand. He still has this in his hand. He still has a lot of support from very wealthy people. Enough wealthy people that he has no problem funding healthcare right now. Is he doing this? No. And can we extend this out to foreign policy? And the answer is yes. I mean, what is the problem with the Muslim world? And he calls the Middle East the Muslim world. Well, it's not a Muslim world. The Middle East is not Muslim. It's predominantly Muslim now after they've massacred and murdered and pushed out all the Christians. All you have to do to understand this is talk to any Egyptian Copt, and they'll tell you what the Muslims did to them in Egypt and why they've left Egypt. Right? Talk to any Christian, any Lebanese Christian. Talk to the Syrian Christians. Talk to the Iraqi Christians. And ask them what the Muslims did to them. And then come and tell me how the Middle East is a Muslim world. The Muslim world is a Muslim world because it got that way at the point of a sword. If you didn't convert to Islam, you were executed. If a Christian was ever suspected, and this is recently, this includes up until recently, up into current times, if you are suspected of converting a Muslim to Christianity, not that you've done it, just to be suspected of it, you're put to death. You're executed for it. And you don't have, again, because as a Christian, and this is, you're non-European. There are two types of Christians. It's just the way there are two types of Greeks. There's the European Christians, and then there are the non-European Christians. The European Christians came 1000 AD on, and basically are derived from the Pope on out, and the non-European Christians are pre-papal and are directly connected to the original Church of Christ. Yet, because it's not in European interest and European goals to keep these people visible, because it undermines the papal legitimacy, non-European Christians become invisible. And this is what I'm talking about, this whole thing about visible and invisible minorities. If a visible minority is a type of minority that you cannot have that has the favor of the European community, which the white people who dominate the UN, who control the UN, and everything. You really can't go up against these people. But if you're an invisible minority, then you can kill these people all you want. And this is where the irony comes in, is that while certain groups of Muslims are visible minorities, other groups of Muslims, like the Palestinians, are invisible minorities. Right? So you have the senators and everybody screaming about, and this is what happened on Anderson Cooper today, talking about the horrors that are going on in Syria. He's playing all this footage of all these horrible bombs and war, what looks like war footage. But all the footage he's shown has already been discredited as being fixed and staged. If you go out into a lot of the international media, you go into a lot of these back sources. And this is not from one or two sources. This is from a lot of sources, including Israeli sources, showing that these same footage that they're showing, the same arguments that they're bringing forward, are being discredited by other people. So he can't say that this is what's going on. What he does, he says it's going on. That's going on. He describes this as discussed for this, but then at the end, after he's done his hyping, he says, "Well, this footage is unconfirmed." One tiny sentence on this footage is unconfirmed, but the whole lead up, the whole part before it, hype, hype, hype. And he does this with, pushing the warmongering done by Hillary Clinton, who is an AIPAC member, a member of this American-Israeli lobby, who have been pushing for this war, this whole concept of Israeli democracy in the Middle East. They've been pushing for this. They're pushing for this in Syria. And here's where it comes out. And I'm gonna look for a particular. Apparently, I don't have it. I have to get the quote from someplace else because where is it here? Do I have it here? Yes, the Human Rights Commissioner. Apparently, let me see if here Navi Pillay. She has been the one going around talking about the human rights abuses in Syria, and they've been promoting her. And this is the latest from Anderson Cooper, talking about how honorable this Navi Pillay is. Now, what you got to remember, that Navi Pillay is a socialist. She works for the socialist UN, and the UN has been pushing socialist policy for a long time now. They've been pushing World Health, and if you look at the UN's policies and how successful the policies have been, is they haven't been successful. Anywhere they've gone in and sort of stepped into, there's a mess. There's a mess, there's a mess in Africa. There's a mess in the Middle East. There's a mess in China, in Asia. I mean, everywhere they've gone, where we've sort of promoted this socialist model, it hasn't worked, because socialist models always put one group above another. It's not individual rights where everyone is equal. It's in socialism, one group becomes the main ruling party, has all the power, and everyone else has to sort of fall in line and hope for the mercy of this one particular main group. Well, this is the fault. This is the problem with socialism. And while she's up there talking about Syria, and Anderson and Cooper, who's talking about the problems in Syria and so on and so forth, what they're not talking about in the same breath is that while Navi Pillay is the Human Rights Commissioner for the UN, is talking about the children in Syria, she's also talking about and has put a report out on the treatment of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. What is Israel's position on this, and AIPAC's position on this? Israel and AIPAC, Israel has recently pulled out of the UN Human Rights Council. It's barred any of the Human Rights Commission to go into any of the areas of West Bank and Gaza and do any form of inspection and study on the condition of the Palestinians there. So on the one hand, they're sitting there saying, "Oh, this person is so great. She's so wonderful. She's such a humanitarian, caring about these Syrian people." And on the other hand, they completely turn it around and say, "Oh, this Navi Pillay, she's got these flighty ideas. She's talking about how the Palestinians are being treated. This is not an issue here in Israel. We are one of the best democracies in the Middle East. What about all the other human rights abuses that are going on around in the Middle East?" And this is an exact quote coming out of Israel from the Israeli foreign minister. Not an exact quote, but a paraphrasing of this quote. But the sentiment is there. Right? If you want to, this is what he was saying. This was the intonation. This was, what was said. And I will produce the quote for tomorrow night on this, because we will talk about this more, about the Israeli position in human rights and the Israeli record on human rights. And what we see here since 2010, this was mentioned, that the promise of Palestinian peace that Obama was hailed for. He went there and he gave these great speeches. Everyone was loving Obama when he was on his way to be elected. Obama was campaigning presidentially for his election around the world, including the Muslim world. And what did he produce? The Palestinian peace talks are dead. Under George Bush, who was such a horrible president, from what the left says, and a lot of the world said, we're so glad George Bush is no longer president. Really? Where's the Middle East peace process right now? It doesn't exist. It did exist under George Bush. You had everybody talking together. You didn't have under George Bush a war and destabilization across the Middle East the way you have now. I mean, under George Bush, you had destabilization in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is where the destabilization was. Under Obama, you have Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt. You have problems in Yemen. You still have problems in Saudi Arabia. You've got destabilization going on in Iran. You've got destabilization going on in Pakistan. When you compare the foreign policies, compare from the speech to what's actually occurring on the ground, the realization of policy, Obama has nothing but failed. And so, in many ways, people, if you're thinking about it, and this is sort of a sad statement on Obama's presidency. When, let's say that George W. Bush was who he was. He was a bumbler. He was a fumbler. He didn't speak properly, and he was pretty Texan. he was a typical Texan up there doing his Texan stuff. And you don't have to go that far back in the American presidency to see this. All you have to do is go back to the Democratic president, Lyndon Johnson, to see who was a Texan, to see George Bush, who was a Texan, behave exactly the same way that Lyndon Johnson behaved as a Texan. The mannerisms, the Texas mannerisms, were there on both the Democrat Johnson and the Republican Bush. And yet, because is, and let's call him the buffoon that the Democrats say he was. And let's call the Obama the genius that the Democrats say he is. Okay, the genius has failed and has made things much worse compared to the idiot. Right, and I'm talking about the definition idiot who is mentally deficient by definition. Right, so the genius has done significantly worse in foreign policy, in domestic policy, than the idiot did. This doesn't say much. No, it doesn't say much. This is an understatement to say that it doesn't say much about President Obama and his presidency. And one can see, and again, if Republicans are watching this, if they can get this to these boneheads who are out on the trail and start bringing this out to the campaign trail, Obama doesn't stand a chance. If Republicans lose this election, it's not because of Obama. It's because they were so stupid not to bring the stuff that's obvious. If you sit down and you seriously look at the stuff, and you do a comparison, policy for policy, between George Bush and Obama, and look at the results on the ground. As I said, let's look at foreign policy. Obama is anti-war. He says he's anti-war. Right? This is his rhetoric. Where have we seen destabilization? Right? And this is where we're going to do our comparison. Under George Bush, we had a war in Iraq, and we had a war in Afghanistan. That's where this destabilization was. 2 countries. You had 2 countries for George Bush. Under Obama said he was going to end up things right away. He didn't. He still has Iraq and Afghanistan. So he's still got the 2 there. But now he's got Pakistan, right? In addition to the 2, he's got Pakistan. He's got Libya. Libya is completely destabilized. There's now almost a civil war going on in there. Syria is destabilized. Yemen is destabilized. Bahrain is destabilized. Saudi Arabia is threatened. Egypt is destabilized. Tunisia is somewhat stable, but it still has its major problems. None of the problems have been resolved in Africa. So Obama has 10 military and foreign policy disasters on his hands compared to George Bush's 2. Here's the ratio. Obama's foreign policy is 5 times, if you want to do on a ratio, is 5 times worse than George Bush's foreign policy. This is the results on the ground from his foreign policy. And yet I'm surprised that this isn't being mentioned by the Republicans. I'm surprised that the Republicans have not been able to sort of pick up even on his domestic failures and really take advantage of what's going on in the news now on Obamacare and Trayvon, Trayvon Martin. I mean, they have a perfect ally in C.L. Bryant. C.L. Bryant agrees with a lot of the Republican position that this isn't a racial issue, that this is a failure of black society, and that this is sort of a hallmark of what's wrong with black society and what needs to be corrected, not an issue that this was racial profiling or this was person a black victim of a white society. The issues go beyond this. But the problem is that the Republicans really seem to be stuck in their attitude towards things that they really just don't see what's going on. And that really doesn't bode well for Romney. It doesn't bode well for Rex Van Torm. It doesn't bode well for any of the group out there. And I know Ron Paul has some of these views, but if he cannot step up to the plate and beat the media bias, such as it is, then he really doesn't have a chance to win the presidency. And this is what the whole campaigning issue for the primaries is all about. Trying to see who you can beat in the presidency. If you can't handle the primaries, you're not going to be able to handle the presidency and getting to the presidency. And that's it. All we need to do is look to see what's going on in the U.S. foreign policy, and we see this foreign policy. We see the warmongering. We see that in Syria, Kofi Annan has backed away from calling from the removal of Assad. We're still hearing this refrain coming from the APEC supporters. And that's including Fox News. It's including CNN's Anderson Cooper. We're seeing it coming from Hillary Clinton and really around the world, wherever you see the supporters of Israel. And I'm not talking about Israel in terms of the land. I'm talking about the Israeli policy, and that's AIPAC. Because again, if you go into the Israeli public, you don't see this. You see Israeli-Iranian peace groups. You see Israeli-Palestinian peace groups. There is a disgust on the ground in Israel for the policies that are being pushed by the Israeli elite, the political elite like Bibi and his crew, along the lines of AIPAC. And the thing is that what has Israel done in this situation here? We've seen that they've pulled out of the UN Human Rights Council. And the thing is that they said when they had this vote on this, and the UN is always having votes. And this is even way back when you had the destruction of Gaza. The UN wanted to go in and do a fact-finding mission. This is when the UN compound was bombed and all the food was burned. Gaza, Israel still isn't allowing the proper amount of fuel to get into Gaza, and this is on the UN record. So that daily in Gaza, the power plant, which depends on Israeli fuel, is routinely shutting down, and they have daily blackouts. This means there's no water to flush, none of the toilets work, there's no lights in the hospital, they can't do any operations. This is punishment on a massive, inhumane scale. This is Gaza. Israel has turned Gaza, and the Israeli policy that goes along with it, has turned Gaza into one massive Auschwitz. Gaza and the West Bank right now is a reflection of the Holocaust. And there are a number of Jewish dissidents who are standing up and saying this, but none of it is reaching the Western media. None of it is reaching any media that is influenced by AIPAC. You're not seeing it on the BBC. You're really not seeing it, surprisingly, you're not seeing it on Al Jazeera. There's no way you're going to see this on CNN. There's no way you're going to see this on Fox. There's no way Anderson Cooper will ever bring this. No matter how much of a humanitarian he claims to be, he will never report on these things. He's only reporting on things that have political importance right now. Focusing on Syria and the Syrian human rights to take the focus away from what's going on in Israel and Palestine. That's where his focus is. So he's ignoring what's going on in Israel and Palestine with the Palestinians, and focusing solely on Syria. And again, this whole Syrian issue is really suspect because you've got a problem that with so much that has been discredited and so much has shown that the rebels are indeed jihadists and killing their own people, because they're known to do this. They're known to kill their own people. They're known to dress up in military uniforms. There's no way to know whether or not the people who are being killed by Assad's forces, or they're being killed by the jihadists. And this is what I have to say, and I want to say this to Assad. I'm hoping that I'm sending a sort of an email to the Syrian TV. I hope you get this out to President Assad. There is, with the internet, no possible way to hide things anymore. Blocking free press, and this is also for China, only hurts you. It doesn't actually help you to hide things. And this is, now that you can sort of see the American policy that's started to play out now. And one of the stories I'm working on for tomorrow night is I've got now the second and third confirmation from different sources that the United States and Britain tried to overthrow the Chinese government. There was a British-backed coup attempt. There was a British-backed coup attempt in China over the last few days. It's slowly coming out. It's slowly being revealed that one of the key figures in this was a British security agent. They're saying he's a former security, but what they've done is that a lot of these agents who work for these intelligence agencies have officially left the intelligence, set up their own private firms, and have gone under contract to the intelligence agencies. So this is the situation with he was a person who had set up his own security firm. As soon as you start hearing this guy has a security firm, you need to think spy, you need to think agitator, you need to think sabotage. And in this here, these are people who have military knowledge on how to push a coup. And this guy, this British agent who is now dead, they found him dead in his hotel, was at the center of this supposed coup. Now, it's more coming. I said, I'm saying supposed, even though I've got three resources, because China right now is denying this. What China needs to do, if there was this case, and I believe it was British-backed, China now has to watch this back, because China has been stated by both Republicans and Democrats that it's an enemy of the United States, and it's an enemy of Europe, it's an enemy of Israel, and that now China has to watch its back because it's going to try to overthrow China at every point in turn. China cannot sort of let its guard down, but this does not mean that they should suppress the freedom of the press. One of the biggest weapons that a covert operative can do, because covert operatives now have successfully infiltrated human rights activists. Human rights activists need to understand this. You've been infiltrated. There are agents working in your midst who are there to push for war. And they use the suppression of the media, the suppression of the lack of freedom of the press to do this. Because the easiest way to spread rumor is through the backbone media, through the internet and stuff like that. And because the official media has been shut down, because there is no freedom of the press, it's hard to confirm it, and these rumors persist and they grow. If there is open freedom, if there is open freedom for the press, if there's an open press, that can't happen because both sides of the information get up, just like we have WikiLeaks. And the thing is that there are good sources out there. There are people out there trying to bring balanced news broadcasts, trying to really show what's going on. Although you have a lot of state media and corporate-supported media not doing so, particularly in the West. And as the West, who claims to be free, aren't free anymore. A lot of the news is staged. A lot of the news is political PR and designed to be propaganda to push people in one political direction or another. And this being said, I say to Assad, to President Assad, the best bet for your chance to survive this right now is to open up the press, allow free press inside, and then the second part is you need to show that your hospitals are open and really treating the wounded, no matter who they are. Because these are the two primary accusations against you. And you can easily defeat this. I've seen the jihadist videos. I have the jihadist videos They have been confirmed by Israeli sources, these jihadist videos. So there isn't a problem anymore. What you need to do is you now start opening up these crucial corridors that are being used against you. Because you're closed and people aren't seeing this, not from a state media, from open media, like myself, they're saying and can say and get people to believe that you're torturing your own people. So I hope this gets to Assad. Open up, take care of the people who are wounded, and we'll see if we can prevent any further unstabilization in the Middle East. Everyone, I'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good evening.